everybody. It's Dr. Nicole with Thrive Chiropractic Coaching, and we're here today with one of my favorite people, definitely my favorite compliance person, Dr. John
Oh,
Davila.
don't put me
And
in front of family, friends, and kids. I don't want, like, yes, I'll take compliance person. That's perfect.
well, certainly got me out of a few pickles over the years. So, Dr. John is founder and owner of Custom Chirosolutions and compliance coupons. And so, John, why don't you just start out and tell our audience a little bit about who you are and why, what is your why? Why did you create these companies?
Right. So I'm a chiropractor like everyone else. The why was because I had heard of friends of mine getting in trouble for certain things. And when a friend of mine who told me that he was working for somebody, the state law enforcement division in South Carolina, walked into this guy's office and said, "Hey, listen, we want to go ahead and talk to you about compliance, some things compliance-wise." I was coaching with another coach at the time, and this guy got in trouble, and he sends me this fax, which I still have. It's old as hell. Don't laugh. It's how old it is. It's still on like the roll laser thermal paper, right? I still have the original fax, and it was the rules or ideas or outlines on how to create a compliance manual for a small group in single physician office. So this is like around 2001, somewhere there, 2000, 2001. And so I started looking through this, and I realized that, like, my coach is teaching me all these things that are not what's in this, or teaching me things to do that are in this list of things not to do. Okay. And so when that came up, I don't know if you know this or not, but my past history, I'm a chemist by trade, and I worked in a fragrance lab. And twice I almost lost my eyesight to people doing non-compliant things. So
Oh,
compliance wise is kind of like one of those things, I kind of care about, don't get me wrong. I'm still a New Yorker by heart, and I still walk across the street. I still jaywalk. It's like an important thing. That said, compliance in general is still an important component to me. But no, I had someone leave some acetic anhydride in my lab when I was working in a lab there in New Jersey, and it kind of like blew up in my face. And I had complained to the company the entire time that the Pyrex we were using was old and scratched and should be discarded. They're like, "Oh, you're fine." And it blew up. And I woke up probably 30 minutes later with my head in an eye wash.
gosh.
And, I kind of said, "Can we get new Pyrex?" And like the next day I had new Pyrex. But, so compliance is kind of like a thing for me. So when I see people talking about things and they don't quite understand what it actually is, I kind of go, well, that's not really what it means. They try and frame it so they could use things on their own. You know what I mean? They say, oh, they downplay it so it doesn't make their actions look bad. When in reality, if someone with a badge came in, it would be bad. Okay.
Right.
That said, this conversation is not about, and my conversation, what I try to do with everyone, is not about beating people with a stick for compliance, or a compliance stick for 40 minutes or an hour or whatever it is. It's about taking the stick of compliance and handing it to you and saying, "Here, beat your patients with this."
Mm-hmm.
Because if not, what ends up happening is we accept their risk. And if we accept their risk, then what ends up happening is I go down, not the patient.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's where all this came down. So I realized, for me, after going through that, hearing my friend, the guy he worked for get arrested, and then realizing the things that were wrong, it's like, compliance makes total sense. So I wrote my own compliance manual, got into that, and then started teaching. So documentation, compliance, stuff like that. So it's turned into a company where we, make macros for doctors and customize their EHR system. But the difference is, and we're going to talk about this in a second, is the macros themselves. And people call me and go, "John, can I have your macros?" I'm like, "Sure, here you go." And in the beginning, we would give them to them. Right, here they are. They would use them, get audited and lose, and call me up, go, "Davila, you suck." And I go, "What did I do?" And I go, "Well, I used your macros. I took your notes." It's like, "No, you used macros that we customized for your office, and then you took your notes, and then you got audited and lost." But the reason why you got audited and lost wasn't because of the notes. It was because you didn't understand the compliance stuff. Yes. Which brings us to what we're going to talk about, which is the most important component. So for me, it's almost like I have two products. I have the macros, yes, and it's like kids, right? I have my first kid, and I know I made mistakes with her. I love her to death. She's not perfect, but she's my perfect first child, right? Because there's no instruction manual.
Right.
Then you have your second child and you're like, oh, I know I've messed up with this one. Let, let me not make the same mistakes with this one. So this one may be a little different. So the second one's a little different. Same thing goes with our products, right? The macros we made, and then we realized that we needed a second component, which is for people to understand what their care plans and their fee schedules look like, because believe it or not, that dictates how you get seen or are seen by an insurance carrier. And by the way, whether you are in network or out, as soon as you give a super
Right.
bill, they build a profile of you. So what we try to do is take the care plan and help the doctor do this, because most compliance, from a compliance perspective, most people don't do this. They tell you, oh, you're wrong, you shouldn't do XYZ, when in reality, the way we work it is, tell us what it is you want to sell. Let's break it down into what is good for, to get reimbursed and what is good for the patient to pay. So the only thing that happens now is that the liability for the patient is spelled out in advance based upon what you want to sell.
Right.
Not this is bad, this is good. It's just, listen, you could sell 100. Listen, we have people that sell 65 visit care plans.
Right.
Fine by me. We just want to make sure that the right person's paying, and that's part of this conversation, which then makes it be no stress on your documentation on the back end.
Right.
So is that this way enough to get to the answer you asked? But anyways, that's what we're trying to do. So we're trying to take people through that process.
First of all, that was great. Thank you for the explanation. I never knew that. I don't think I knew that you were a chemist. I don't think I knew that about you. It's always interesting to find out people's why and how people got on in this journey. And a couple of points that I want to go back to that you already made, but I want to highlight it for my audience, and that is that because this is some of the stuff that I hear from people, and that is that you don't have to cut your care, you don't have to cut your care plans, you don't have to practice non-chiropractic to be compliant. Like you could have a totally straight, totally principled care plan based practice, and you can still be totally compliant. And so
100%.
I just wanted to highlight that for you guys that are listening to this, that are opening your own practice, because a lot of times I hear let's talk about discounts now, because I know a
Yeah.
lot of coaches
Great
out there,
example.
myself included. We do care plans, and we do discount them up to a certain amount. So let's talk about the day one first, John. So on the
Yeah.
day one, if somebody wants, so the big thing right now in chiropractic, and everybody's loving it because they don't have to do what you and I had to do 30 years ago, which was knock on doors. Yes, we had to knock on doors. We didn't have digital marketing. So everybody wants to do digital marketing, and they want to do these coupons, which I think it's great as long as you're doing it properly. But tell us about how much are we allowed to discount? Is it even legal to discount our day one? Who can we
Right.
offer it to? Is there a group of people we can't offer it to?
Right.
Give us a skinny on that.
Yeah. So when you offer discount, you can do it, but you have to understand. Let me explain first where this idea comes from, right? So, for example, there are certain states south of Georgia, you can call whatever state that is, right? South of Georgia, that has a rule that says you could give something away for free. And that's the state board rule, right?
Okay.
The problem with that is on a federal level, you can't give things away for free or less than fair market value. That comes from the Office of Inspector General. That's also against, if you're an insurance contract, that's also against all your insurance contracts. Okay. So when the state board says you can do this, but the feds say you can't do this, what that means is if someone complains to the board about you doing something, they won't harass you for doing it because you didn't violate state board regs. But as soon as you violate a federal law, now you're an ethics violation, even though you didn't violate state board regs.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like, for example, in my state, there's nothing that says you can or can't give things away for free.
Okay.
But if you violate federal law, it's an ethics violation.
Gotcha.
It's just an easy way to not have to. It's an easy way to not have to cover all the rules to say this is now illegal.
Gotcha. It's kind of like pot. There are some states where pot's totally legal, but federally it's still not legal. So you're still breaking a federal law.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yes. And the fact that people fly with pot blows my mind, but that's beside the point. Anyway, It blows my mind as a compliance guy who will jaywalk, but still, anyway. So what happens next is once you realize that you can't give it away for free for a less than fair market value, then you have to go ahead and start researching what the OIG feels is fair market value, and their fair market value, the max discount you give is up to 60%, and it's still not over too much of a discount to go ahead and make it an inducement. So you can give up to 60% off. Now, in order to do that, you need a vehicle. You need a way to do it, right? So one of the ways that everyone's out there, you could sell a DMPO, which means a discount medical plan organization. You could sell access to that, and people sell it to a family for a year of $49 a year or $59 a year or $69 a year. And you can join this network and then get a discount that way, right? That's one way. There's numerous of them out there. With our company, we went and found where the OIG said there is a way to do it and use something called a federal safe harbor, which means it's illegal to do unless you do it within this environment. It's a safe harbor. So within our safe harbor, we have a program where it's compliant coupons where we actually train doctors to go ahead and give discounts legally. That way they can give discounts to everybody without having to sell them anything. So what ends up happening is we become your compliance officer for your fee schedule. And because we show you exactly how to give discounts, everything else, and then we maintain all the registrations. And that's how it works. And you can give up to 60% off. So you can do that because it comes from the Office of Inspector General, you could give now a discount legally to a Medicare patient. You can give them to a self-pay patient. You can give them to an insurance patient. But the discounts have to be done correctly. Like you can't give the discount after you bill insurance. So if it's a $100 service, you can't bill $100, get paid $80, and then give 60% off the copay.
That's important, guys. That's important. Did you guys get that?
Right.
Now, John, what about with patients who the doctor is in network with? Are we allowed to give discounts to those people?
Absolutely. Yeah. See, the way that OIG wrote this up was as long as everyone benefits from the discount, it's totally fine. So, for example, if the service is $100 and I give 60% off, then I bill $40 to the insurance company.
Gotcha.
And now they pay 80%, so I get 32 and the patient pays 8, and the insurance company saves money as well, which is the way that whole works. That's why you have to give the discount before you bill insurance. And if you're doing it in network, you give it off of your in-network rate.
Gotcha. So, John, what do the logistics look like for this? So I know we use this in our office. This is what I highly recommend for all of my clients. This is what I recommend, compliance coupons. And tell us what you recommend as far as the logistics. Like we usually have them register on day one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you register on day one, and you can do right from the front desk. And all we need is the patient's name and email address, because you can have multiple John Joneses. And that way we just keep the information. And if anyone ever asks, like we've had it come up before, where a patient complained that they were being overcharged for something, and in the state of Iowa, and the patient refused to pay. The doctor took the patient to small claims court because they took whatever insurance money that had come to them. And the judge wanted to know, okay, well, how did you do this? And he goes, we even gave a discount. Okay, how'd you do discount? Called us. We gave it as part of our program. If you get questioned, we give you all the backup data. And so we created a whole entire folio for the doctor. He gave it to the judge. The judge came back and said that the patient owed the money. He didn't get to keep the money from the insurance company, and he even did you a favor and legally gave you a discount. So, I mean, it was all, we've had that come up, I think, twice in 15 years. So we went to court twice in 15 years, and both times the judge said discount was offered legally, totally fine. We have letters of legal opinion. We have all the different stuff that goes with it as well. But even through Medicare reviews and everything else, it's not a problem. So, but we've had that happen where it's come up and the discount is legit, but you just got to make sure that you have a way to verify that it was done. So you register the patient. We have a portal. Each client gets their own portal, and you get your own list, your own website. Put patient's name, email address, log them in, and you're good to go. One person for the entire family, and you only got to do it once. And there's nothing to sell them. They have to buy anything for your office or anything else like that. And then you can go ahead and give them the discount the way you want to.
Amazing. And then that registration covers that family for all the care in your office, correct? So
Yep.
like
Mhm.
they go through their day one, they come in for their day two, they start a family care
Yep.
plan. That care plan's
Yep.
discounted. They're all covered for that. And that's totally
Exactly.
legal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Amazing.
It's legal as soon as you register the patient.
Great.
Quote
And
unquote,
what if you
the
don't
safe
register
harbor.
the patient? What if you
If
don't
you don't
register?
register the patient, then you're doing it without a vehicle, and now you're outside the safe harbor, which is the reason why people go, what does safe harbor mean? It's exactly what it sounds like. It's illegal to do it until you go into the safe harbor. So until you
Right.
register, exactly.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right, let's talk a little bit about care plans, John.
Mhm.
So, in our office, and this could get like a little bit sticky because I know we could have a conversation for hours just on care plans alone, and I want to try for the sake of the people watching this, I want to try to keep our time together to about 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Um, but in our office, we create our care plans, and we have our active therapy portion of the care plan, and then we have what would be considered like the maintenance or the wellness portion of the care plan. First of all, can you explain to us what is the difference? What's the criteria that the patient has to meet to be in active therapy, and then what's the criteria that they have to meet to be in wellness therapy?
Right. And by the way, good job on your last call with that, by the way, because set up, you're like, oh, okay, tracking, no problem. The key to this is understanding that, let's put it this way. I love these conversations. I'm gonna kind of pre-frame it. I love these conversations more than when I go teach this stuff at a state association event. The reason being is because in this environment, people are trying to sell what I consider to be a health solution versus a pain problem or solution to a pain problem. Because if you're selling a solution to a pain problem, then you're always fighting the insurance company fees and always fighting for active care. And you're trying to get as much out of the insurance company as possible, as compared to if you're selling a long-term health solution, an active care component followed by a maintenance component, then or a corrective care component or whatever you want to call it, spinal corrective component, any of those things at all. If you're selling that, then what ends up happening is you're selling a block of visits, but you're selling a block of visits to go ahead and handle a long-term solution, which means that it goes well beyond the point in which they become go from active into wellness care, which that point, and when they go from active and they stabilize, that point's called subjective stability. So when their subjective symptoms become stable, they move from active into wellness care. Your coding should change from 98940 to S8990 in cash and insurance patients, not Medicare, by the way. But in that game, what you're trying to do is you're trying to go ahead and move the patient from improving to stability. That's your initial job. Now, here's the thing. You have to think of this as the way a duck floats across, or a swan floats across the water, like a swan floats across the water. We see it, it's like smooth, it just floats, right? It's like so smooth. But when it gets out of the water, it's like there's nothing graceful about a swan. Even beneath the surface, it paddles like aggressively. There's nothing graceful about it, right? It's the same thing with your patients, right? So if you're listening to this, you have to understand where Nicole sits in this game is above the surface, and then we sit beneath the surface, right? So a patient comes in, and everything you learn from what Nicole's talking about here is, I love this place. I love getting treated here. I love the outcome. I stay, I pay, I refer. All these different things are what the patient sees when they come in, aka swan floating across top of water, aka graceful, right? Beneath the surface, no one knows how hard it is to code, document, bill, and price out your claims. In fact, the patients don't even care. As long as it's right. They don't care about any of that stuff. How long it takes you, what you got to do. As long as it's right, that's all they care about. Okay? So that said, now we have to ask ourselves this question. How do I manage all that stuff beneath the surface if I'm already spending all my time dealing with the stuff on top of the surface? Because that's where people lose it. That's where I have to spend my time, because that's where I really bring the patients in and then close them. So what happens is they neglect the bottom half, and then what ends up happening in their area is they end up with this scorched earth policy, because now the word on the street is you just abused insurance, or I never got paid, or I never got reimbursed, and now that's the word in your office. Now you're fighting against that, as compared to, I went there, I paid for my care, I got the most out of my insurance as possible, and it was not overly expensive. My whole family went, because you need to balance both. You can't focus on one versus the other. It needs to be both. And that's the reason why within your care plan, to be able to figure out what is active care and what is wellness care, and then sell that as a package, understanding the value of it, which is, teach them all that stuff, that's great. And then understanding what the costs are, and then what the profit margin is, and then how you discount backwards into selling a care plan that doesn't lose money, which, by the way, if you think this is funny, this is not. 92% of the doctors that come to us already in practice sell a care plan that loses money. They have no idea. 92%. I
know. I believe that. I know doctors who are raking in over $1 million in practice, and they're spending, 1.2.
You and I both know the same person who is a big coach for a big company. Sold his practice years ago. Was collecting $1 million a year, and was insulted when I told him I knew he couldn't pay his mortgage. Mm-hmm. He goes, "Well, how do you know?" I go, "Well, I know your staff. I know your overhead. I know exactly what this is. You are borrowing money every other month." He's like, "No, I'm not." I said, "Yes, you are." He goes, "No, I'm not." I said, "Yes, you are. I already know. I have everything in the background. You sent me everything. I know." He's like, "Well, how did you know?" Because it's there. He goes, "Yeah, but I see 1,000 a week." So what? Mm-hmm. So what? It doesn't matter. So what ended up happening was we found out, ready for this? His collected per visit was $11.
Oh my gosh. No, but I believe it, because I know a lot of high volume doctors that are doing that.
In 2.5 years of me working with him, we got it up to 39 or 41. I think maybe it was 41 a visit. And it had gone down because we gotten it down from, now think about this, he got it down from 1,000 to about 700. He was freaking out. But he went from 11 to 26. Mm-hmm. So he's freaking out about, but I said, "But you're making money now." He's like, "Yeah, but I want to have," I said, "Yeah, but," and by the time we got back to 41, he sold, and part of his deal was they had to keep us as the compliance officer because his name's still on the wall.
Oh, gotcha.
See what I mean? So that kind of thing, because he wanted to keep that value of his name attached to it and not have the compliance issues that go around with it. But that's what happens. So people get stuck on the numbers. They don't get mm-hmm. It's really great to see 1,000, but if you can't afford to go ahead and pay your mortgage, you're not going to sleep under your adjusting table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, and it happens all the time. It happens all the time. A lot
more often to the people on stage than you're willing to admit for some people.
Yeah. Agreed. Mm-hmm. Okay, so because in a minute I actually want to go back to that profit thing, because that's hugely beneficial, and that's like one of the first things that I teach my clients when they're opening a practice is how to calculate what their overhead is going to be, how to calculate mm-hmm. what their recurring overhead is going to be, and then how to calculate what it's going to cost them per visit, so that they can back into a care plan that's profitable. But before we do that, I have a couple of questions. So we talked about how the care plans, there's an active therapy portion, there's a maintenance portion of the care plan. John, can you discount the entire care plan, or are you only allowed to discount the maintenance portion of the care plan?
Right. You can discount all of it within that program. You shouldn't, but you shouldn't.
Okay, right? Tell us why.
So the reason why you shouldn't is because I'm going to ask you questions and we're going to role play. I want you to answer yes or no to this question, or say active or wellness when I ask you the question. Where is most of your time spent documenting?
Active.
Okay. Where is the biggest chance that you're going to miss a diagnosis?
Active.
Where's the biggest issue with writing reports?
X-ray reports, I don't write reports, exams. But probably active.
X-ray, going to write an X-ray report, right, that kind of stuff. Anyone else taking X-rays, X-ray reports? Where's the biggest chance that the patient's going to drop out of care?
Active.
Okay, so if all your liability, A, financially, and B, from a risk management standpoint, is in active care, why are you giving a discount in active care as compared to rewarding the patient for going through active care and giving the entire discount across a long period of wellness care? So from a risk standpoint, it doesn't make any sense. Why do I don't even know this person. Why would I reward them? Now, the problem we see is when people do this. Well, John, I'll give the discount, but what I'll also do if they don't finish the care plan, I'll retroactively change the fee schedule back.
Oh yeah, tell us about that, because I know that you
Oh,
cannot do that.
okay. I would say 25% of our people that come to us, new doctors who are operating, come with a complaint on their board history for that exact problem.
Okay.
As soon as you change the fee schedule on somebody, because they thought they bought $22 a visit, but as soon as you changed it back to $127 a visit because they didn't finish the care plan, just set your watch and wait for the board complaint to come, because they expected a refund, and now you're telling them they don't get anything because your fee for active care was ridiculous, and then you gave the discount on the back end on the at the beginning, but you didn't honor it, and the board's going to come in and go, no, you can't do that. Now, people do it and no one complains. There are times no one complains, but when they do complain, every single time the board's going to go, can't do that. So we see that all the time. So the biggest way to do this is that's why when we set up the care plans, it's not just, what is you want to do. Let's look at from a coding perspective. Okay, how do we code so that the insurance carrier doesn't know you're there as compared to flying under the radar? Why don't we just be stealthy in the middle of it all, right? Here's exactly how you do it. And then when you get to wellness care, this is how you code this. All your documentation matches, great, no problem. Here's how you discount it correctly so that active care is active care. The fee is normal, like it's not a ridiculous fee. And then your wellness care, you're going to give a discount. You're going to sell what you want. And if you do it that way, there's another advantage. And that is, regardless of what your insurance carrier agreements are, right? Whether you're in contract with Blue Cross or Medicare or something like that, when you have your fee schedule set up correctly, is that there's no, and the discount's up correctly, so there's no discount in active care. What ends up happening is you have to manage less fees. There's one active care fee, right? So all your 994 O's, 1s, and 2s, there's a fee for each one. I don't have to worry about changing them. And then my S code in the wellness care, that I have to manage. But after that, all the other ones I don't have to manage. And people, give discounts across all kinds of stuff. And it's like, how many 9940s do we have? Oh, we have 19 of them. How do you manage them all? Well, sometimes we mess it up. Well, okay, well, don't.
Yeah.
So if you manage that correctly, you give the discount wellness care, you have a normal fee, and then the patient understands the first 22 visits, it's 55. The next 40 visits are going to be 35, for example.
Right.
Right.
Because those are your
that comes
discounted visits.
Correct. Exactly. So even when you have a discount, let's say you're in network with Blue Cross, and now that 55 in active care turns into 45, with our program, you can moderate the discount. So if you want to give less of a discount in wellness care, you can do that and still have the same care plan value, whether you're in network or out, which is one of the advantages to our program.
Yes. Amazing. There was something earlier you had mentioned, you were talking about, and you said, it was with coding. So we were talking about active therapy versus maintenance therapy. The active therapy, we code the 98941 or 98940. Or 98942.
Yep.
The maintenance gets coded as, I just call it the S code. It's the S
code 8990.
8990. And you said that's true for everybody but Medicare. Why is it different for Medicare? And what do you do for Medicare?
Oh, okay. Medicare would be, you would use AT modifier on the 99401 and 2. And then in wellness care, it's 99401 and 2 with a GA modifier.
That's it.
That's it. So 994 GA equals S899. I mean, literally, or kind of sort
of. Okay, gotcha. And then you could still discount that? That's allowed?
You could, yeah, you could on the back end, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
and that's allowed.
In fact, if you wanted to, not that you would, but you could discount the 98940 AT if you wanted to.
Right.
Yeah, so you could discount all of it if you wanted to, the entire thing.
Well, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do
that. It's a possibility.
You're allowed to do it, but we don't want to do it. And then you would just put that amount on the ABN, right? Or the ABN or the opt-out letter.
ABN, no opt-out letter in this case, just ABN. Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha. Cool. All right, so let's talk about profitability, making these practices profitable. All
Yeah,
right, so you have, you use an Excel spreadsheet that I really like because all the calculations are already programmed, but you can really do a simple third grade math problem to kind of figure
sure,
out what your overhead is, going to be and what it's going to cost you to put a patient on the table. So do you want to talk
sure,
to us about that?
sure.
How
What
do
do
you,
you want to
how
know?
do you, well, okay, let's start out really simple. So I'm a chiropractic student, just graduated chiropractic college. How do I figure out what it's going to cost me to put a patient on my table?
Right. So the answer to that question is you have no idea. That is just that's the answer. But here's the thing. This is what people miss. And what's funny is I just had this conversation because, I have a client who came to us. They were working another office. They just started with us and on like Monday, and they had their soft opening and on Wednesday, and literally last week. And then they got their calculator back to me on Friday, and they had a massive, massive, massive big screening set up. They're hoping to get patients. I'm waiting to hear a text message from them on Saturday afternoon. So I did the calculator call with them on Friday at like 3 in the afternoon. And I'm like, okay, here's what we need to do. Here's what I want you to figure out. Here are the numbers I want you to figure out. Get this back to me, and I'll get on the call with you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So Saturday morning, 9 a.m., I'm on the call with these two docs. Now, here's the interesting part. They had just enough understanding because they worked for someone else to get an idea of what the overhead was, right? But they're in the same boat as somebody new. But the reason why I bring them up is because my commentary to them about the numbers is that the document you're working on is not a static document. It is a
Right.
living, breathing animal. You have to continually feed that to understand where you're at. Now, we can get into profitability and everything else, but that's too simple. I don't think that's complicated enough for someone if you're listening to this, profit margin you should get, right? Let me give you another twist that makes sense of reason why this is so important. So if you know exactly what it is you're supposed to get out of a case, right? As a manager in the office, as a manager of the office, the overall owner of the office, you should be able to predict how much you should collect based upon how many new patients came in and closed.
Mhm.
Wouldn't it make sense? And if you're listening to this and you've practiced a little bit before, just think about this for a second. Wouldn't it be nice to not play hover doctor and ask the CAs in the front, "Where's my money?" Wouldn't it be better to go, "Hey, listen, we closed 16 people, 8 were this care plan, 4 for this, 4 were this plan. That's 12, and I had 4 more in this plan. We should have collected this amount. Now you can predict what you're supposed to do in the future. If you can predict what you're going to do in the future, the value to you now is that your management is statistically based. It isn't personality based.
Mhm.
See what I mean? So I know exactly what it is, and that's the reason why that number of your overhead is so important. And we add another number on top of that, which is not just your overhead number, but what it costs you to live, because that number is also self-dependent. Like, for example, you may be able to live on ramen noodles. I'm not.
Right.
So since I'm not going to live on ramen noodles, my overhead, I have to take into account how much I believe I'm going to cost myself to live. And if you're listening to this call and you're watching this, you're going, well, you know what? It's not just me. It's also my wife or my husband who's also a DC. Then you have to definitely take that into account, because the mistake, Nicole, is this: people have a mentor or someone they know, and they're like, oh, I like the way this person works, so they come to me with their fee schedule, and I'm like, this doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
Well, why not? Because you have no idea what that number is based on.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to use it. Okay, no problem. Take them through the process. They're like, oh, I can't sell for that, can I? No, you can't. They have no idea, because that number. Because here's our problem, right? From a coach's standpoint, our problem is that we're far enough removed from school that we understand what it is that students don't know yet. And the biggest thing they don't know yet is how to sell for themselves.
Right.
Because the entire time in school, all they've done is, and I'm guilty, and I guarantee you're going to raise your hand as well. The job was to get out. It wasn't to sell X-rays. It wasn't. If it meant that I could adjust the secretary in admissions daughter 8 times to get credit as an outpatient, then damn it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And because that's our job is to play the game, give CCE the food they need to go ahead and blurt us back out some type of degree so we can go ahead and get out. But when you get out, you have no idea what it means to sell. That's why that overhead number has to be a living, breathing document. You have to continue to keep an eye on that. So don't be disheartened that I don't know. You're not going to know. The key is to keep an eye on it. Yes. And then the other part is this. The last thing I'll let you, and I don't want to go overhead. I'll go on time with you, but the overreaching thing is this. You have to be able to figure out how to extract value out of that overhead number. How many people you see, right? You see more people, your overhead doesn't go down. Your overhead may go down slightly, but if you see more people, you may need more help. So we go through a calculation with our clients of how many people per person, and then how much per person, all that kind of thing. But the key to this is understanding. I need to know what that number is, because you may look down one day and you may be spending everything you collect. Oh, we're seeing 1,000 a week. Okay.
Right. Well, that's what we just talked about, of that coach, that example that you had given. And, he was spending more than what he was making, and yet he had $1 million plus practice, and it happens all the time.
Happens a lot.
And what would you say, in your opinion, what would you say is because one of the things I also teach my clients is we follow the Profit First book, the Profit First system of banking. And what would you say is a good goal? What would you say a good goal is to set for profit margin? Right? They're not going to start off at this right away, but what is a good expectation to have once they've been in practice for a little while?
Okay, so when we set this up with our clients, in addition to just fee schedule, we look at 3 pots, right? Pot 1 is overhead, pot 2 is your personal overhead, and then pot 3 is corporate profit. So that's a number you have to be comfortable with to put in, and then you have to spend some time. This is the sad part about our game, right? Our game and being in practice leads us to adjusting, patient care, all this cool stuff. But when we get down to financially forecasting taxes, it's like it goes out into the Netherlands. I can't figure this stuff out. Working with somebody and like a tax professional, and then saying, okay, we need to have XYZ. Then you have to go back in and add that number to say, okay, this is what I need to collect in addition to everything else, because you can't not pay your mortgage 1 month in order to go ahead and pay your taxes.
Right.
Because that's the biggest problem in our profession. I don't care what anyone says. New patients isn't the problem. I know more chiropractors with tax problems than have new patient problems.
Yeah.
So the issue here is, how do I figure out what my future liabilities are financially as far as taxes? How about fixing equipment, getting new equipment? Let's say you want to hire somebody. Let's say you want to hire an associate. All these things, you have to add that into your corporate profit margin so you can do that. So it's funny because I've heard the book before, and I've been doing this in this model 13, 14 years. And someone came to me and said, did you see this? I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I had no idea that we're kind of helping people do that, before that. But the idea here is, how do we set that number up and then take that money, and then because you know what the overhead is, you know what you need to spend for yourself personally, the rest of the money it should go into a separate account, because that's where it's going to get paid from. Don't put it in your general. If you put it in your general banking account, you will spend it. You know how I know that? Because I spent it.
I did too.
That's how I know. Because I did. I spent it. And that's why my wife is like, you can't have. I'm like, I taught a class this weekend and I brought back the money. And I'm like, can I have some? She's like, no. I'm like, why not? She goes, there's a cost to this. I'm like, oh. So, that's how it works. So you just have to understand where those numbers are and be vigilant. Now, I'm not saying you cut to the bone, because you can't make money from saving. Right? You can't make money in business saving money. You have to spend time and effort. Sometimes it's effort, time, right? Money, and other times it's money, in order to be able to do that. You can't see 800 people by cutting staff.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there are times when you do have to spend money to make money. That's totally true. but understanding what you're trying to get out of the money you're spending is more important.
Right. Well, that's a whole nother That's a whole nother discussion, because now that's a whole nother discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's where we start to teach these young chiros how to see something as a cost and versus an
Yeah.
expense versus an investment.
I'll give you a great. I got to give a great example. I had one of the about 2 weeks ago at an office. I was teaching in Warner Robins, Georgia, and I had this guy. He has 3 associates in his office, and he says to me, he goes, we see about 700 a week, and we're going through this conversation, and he's like, you know what I can't do? I can't get my doctors and my staff out of the office at 6 o'clock. And I go, why? Because they're sitting there, the staff's waiting for the doctors to finish the notes so they can go ahead and go into charges, they can be done. I'm like, okay, so let me go through this with you. This is how much it would cost for us to work together. And then you would save that money in a matter of 8 hours. So by the end of the week, your docs would have their notes done before 5:30, and you would save on 6 people 30 minutes a day in payment. And he's like, where's the contract? Because there are times, because once again, like I said, that overhead number, you have to extract value from. The overhead is not a bad thing. Overhead's not a bad thing. Overhead allows you the freedom to be able to do certain things. So, that's why, for some of us, I'm sitting in my studio today, I have a couple $1,000s worth of video equipment. It helps you that, oh my God, I can't spend that money. You need to.
Yeah.
In order to be able to produce what you want to produce. So there are times when that money's correct. So there are times when, you need that new equipment. You need to go ahead and listen, you can't put duct tape on your adjusting table. If it's cracked, get a new cushion. Get a new cushion. It's all, there are times when your overhead is important, and you have to be able to not justify to yourself, but understand why are we in business? What are we doing here?
Exactly. I'm laughing because we currently have a hole in our adjusting table, and Dr. Laura goes, can I just put duct tape on it? And I said, no, just call the guy to reupholster it. Get this done.
Yes. But that's going to be $200. It's only 8 cents worth of tape. I don't care.
Yeah,
but that's totally true. But that is value extracted out of my overhead. Even if it's for my own peace of mind, I'm okay with that. But I want it to look, once again, remember, swan above the surface, beneath the surface. I want it to be graceful. I want everything I do for the patients to see that it's graceful.
Right.
Duct tape ain't graceful.
Right.
But I'm okay to do that because beforehand I figured out what my corporate profit was supposed to be, so I can afford $200 in upholstery fees.
Right. Guys, did you guys get that? Because Dr. John said that really quick, and it was super important. Yeah. Oh my goodness, John, I feel like we can always talk forever on this. Is there anything, before we wrap up, is there anything else? Did I miss anything? Is there anything else that you think that a chiro who is preparing for besides getting in touch with you? I'm going to tell you guys, hands down, this is Dr. John. This is the guy that here, now you can put the name to the face, because this is the guy that I tell all of you to get in contact with for compliance and Medicare in your notes. So this is the guy. All right. So besides getting in touch with you, is there anything else that you would want a new doctor to know while they're learning, while they're doing their care plans, creating their care plans, things like that?
Yeah, I think what I want them to know is that when you're brand new, you have something that you'll never have again. And that is a clean profile. You will never, ever, ever have the opportunity for someone in any other facet of practice, meaning whether it's your board or whether it's Medicare or whether it's insurance company and stuff, State Farm, Allstate, no one knows anything about you right now. So you've heard the saying before, right? You only get one first impression. It is true right now. You have one opportunity to go ahead and do this correctly. That's the reason why Like you call me, like we work with students who are open their practice. We work with them for free until they open. The reason why we do that is because if I ask you, oh, you got to pay me 8, 10, 20, whatever, $100,000 before you open, people wait until the day they open or make some money. The problem is you've already made financial deals with patients and made those mistakes. So now I
Yes.
have to correct it, right? So you have to ask, like, it's like, did the captain of the Titanic see the iceberg before he hit it? Yes. Did he try and stop the boat? Yes. Did he try and turn the boat? Yes. What happened? He
He
still
still
hit the
hit
iceberg. Yes,
it.
exactly. So in this situation, if we know where all the mines are in the water, we can steer you around that before you even get started. And that's, once again, it's not the macros. That's what we are talking about earlier. It's not the macros. It's the understanding of the care plan. So once you and Dr. Cole get all your care plan values together, understanding what the coding is, what the process is to go ahead and phase change from active into wellness care, that's going to be the biggest time saver, because now you don't have to think about it. It's just in part of your program or part of your care plan. But here's what's funny, right? So if you think about it, all of these things, and if you're just starting out, this will make sense to you, right? You're going to learn fees after you get started, or as you get started. Your clinical thought process, you probably kind of figured out maybe a year or two ago. The documentation stuff you didn't care about because no one cares about it in school, and I don't take it personally. I didn't care about it either, right? So so you're going to get out of school and you're going to go ahead and borrow someone's macros who they didn't care either, right? So now you have a fee schedule from here, a care plan that you kind of figured out over here, a fee schedule over here that were all made in 3 different points in time. So a year from now, someone's going to go, "Hey, listen, can I get a copy of my file so I can figure out how much I owe you?" And it'll sit on your desk for a month because none of them were made at the same time with the same idea. That's the reason why in this process, once we know the care plan, what equipment you have, what your thought processes are, fee schedules created, great, no problem. The idea of medical necessity is understood. Now what ends up happening is we extract that information and plug them into your macros, and now we give you specific workflow tied to what your care plans are. So now you can actually, you don't have to think about where you are on the care plan. You can see the number of visits, know the name of the care plan, see the number of visits, know exactly what number you should be on, whether that should be an active or wellness care, whether insurance should be turned on or off, whether you should have an ABN or not. All those things should be figured out before you do it. And if you know that beforehand and you go into the game like that beforehand, now you know exactly what's going to happen, right? It's like getting drunk in the car and driving home. First person to ask you your blood alcohol levels in cop. Too late. Same thing with documentation. By the time you send notes in, they've already clocked you because it was the billing profile that got you in the first place. That's why the billing profile is so important. So right now you have every opportunity in the world to do everything correctly and have no errors from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And that should be, of all the things you have, right? Let me give you the top 5 things you should cherish the most in your life. Your husband, your wife, your spouse, your kids, your family, your profession, and then your profile. And wherever you want to put God in there, put God there. But all of those things, your profile at the very beginning is the most important thing to you, because it will dictate to you how much time you spend having to respond to these people. Either you will have to, or you won't have to. And your profitability that we haven't got into yet is how much time you're spending chasing bad claims because of your profile, which is a whole nother hour conversation. But anyway.
Yeah. So I still run into like a lot of people, that are coming out of school and they don't want to do insurance. And the first question that I ask is why? And they're like, well, I don't want to do the notes and I don't want to have liability. And it's like, first of all, I never get asked for notes. Just so that you guys know, like, this is what John's talking about. I never get asked for notes. Like, we never have to. The only time that we have to send in notes is if we're doing like a PI and we have to get like pre-approval or something.
Yeah.
But on a day-to-day, like regular insurance company, we never have to send in notes. I've never gotten a request for money back from an insurance company. I've never been audited. I've never had an audit. And the reason why, like, you hear all these horror stories is because people are not investing in people like John to make sure that they're set up and doing it the right way. Because I promise you, it's so easy. And if you're set up and you're doing it the right way, the way that John teaches you how to do it, you're not gonna have any of that. You're not gonna have problems with any of that.
Yeah,
So
it's funny. And don't forget, as soon as you give the super bill, you're in an insurance. You are an insurance practice.
yeah, so most people don't know that.
No, you're an insurance
Like
practice.
that if I had a highlighter, guys, I would highlight that, because just because you're at a network and just because you're, you give them a super bill and you don't submit from your office, John's absolutely right. You still have to follow the same exact rules as
Same
you would
rules.
have to follow if you were a network.
Yeah, here's the funny part. People think Medicare dictates documentation.
Mhm.
That's not true. You know what dictates documentation? ICD-10 and CPT,
Mm,
which are standards of care, which you have to use.
right,
So documentation has nothing to do with it.
right.
And that's because of HIPAA. HIPAA has HIPAA, like health insurance portability, which is the big thing. So doctors need to be able to give their notes to a patient so they can go between me and you. Right. So if you take my notes, you know exactly what I wrote down. So all those codes, you're not allowed to have your own codes. So there's something called code set transaction standard. So that code set transaction standard means, or rule means that, or law, excuse me, means that the codes are set by Medicare. So here's a little history lesson for everyone. Back before the turn of the century, I love saying that now because it sounds so crazy, right? Back before the turn of the century, there used to be a code called 97260, which was an adjustment, which you would use with 97261, which was an additional area, which you could
Okay.
use with a 9921211 code, which was a reeval or E&M for that component. I would build 3 codes for one adjustment, which all changed. And then, by the way, and Medicare had A2000. There were 4 different codes that I would use on adjustment. Then all under HIPAA in 1996, it ended up getting in, and then they used it in 2000. In 2000, it changed to 99, 401, and 2, and now everyone has to use that. So it's
I didn't know
all
any of that.
been. Oh,
That was before my time.
that was before the turn of the century, my dear. Back in courts, back when it was horses and carts. Back in the day,
Ah,
back before
amazing.
cell phones.
Oh, yeah, I remember those days I remember. All right, John, listen, well, we went over time as we usually do, but I don't care, because this stuff is vital information for you guys to know when you guys are opening your practice. And John, thank you so much again for taking the time out of your busy schedule to meet with me and do this. How can we're going to put some info up, because we're going to share this all over. It's going to be in our course, but it's also going to be all over our social media. So we will put your info up. But
Yeah,
what's the best way for somebody that's watching this video to reach out to you?
yeah. You email us, info@customchirosolutions.com. You can go to
Info,
our website, info@customchirosolutions.com. If you go to our
gotcha.
website, Custom Chiro, just go on the contact us button, and just you message us there as well. If you're on Facebook, you can find me at Helping Chiropractors Do the Right Thing. Dr. John Davila, Helping Chiropractors Do the Right Thing. Or 800-974-3479 if you want to give us a call. But after that, I mean, really the key, if you want to understand what's going on, and by the way, if you want to call and chat and understand what's going on, just call me. That's totally fine. Or just text me or whatever, or message me through Facebook. We'll chat. I'll have all day. And by the way, and I don't care if you use me or don't use me. Right? I totally subscribe to the idea that if you want to know the information, here's the information. In fact, the only difference between me and a doctor or someone who practices, I read Medicare and they read Yoakum and Rowe. Right? So I know this stuff. It's all out there. You can have all the information. The key is getting it implemented, and that's
Yeah,
the one thing that people need help with. If you need help with getting it implemented and you don't want to deal with it, then just let us know. Because the truth is, the best way to handle it is say, John, I don't want to deal with it, and then you wake up next day and your macros are done,
yeah. It's
and
that
then you're like,
easy.
you move on. You
Yeah,
move on with your day. Yeah. So if you
it's
like that,
that
that's
easy.
cool. Call us, and we have a special discount for your clients anyway. So just let me know exactly what it is that you need, and we'll get together.
Amazing, amazing. All right, thank you, Dr. John. Appreciate you.
Very
All
welcome.
right,
Thank
you
you for having
guys.
me.
Of course.